Maniacs, and welcome to another edition of Movie Flashbacks. And with these series of movie flashbacks, I've been reviewing every single Spider-Man movie leading up to Spider-Man Homecoming. I am so excited for that movie, but now we have come to this point of the franchise where I am done with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, and now let's talk about Mark Webb's two Amazing Spider-Man movies. As in, the title's called Amazing Spider-Man, and I'm not saying these movies are amazing. So despite the fact that Spider-Man 3 was a commercial success, it was a critical failure, and so they were trying to get Spider-Man 4 off the ground, but Sam Raimi backed out. And when Sam Raimi left, so did Tobey Maguire. So the Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man movies were just pretty much dead in the water. So now Sony was looking to reboot the Spider-Man movies. And when I heard this news, I was super mad because I really loved the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. And I don't know what they're planning on doing with this movie, but I remember when this movie was getting ready to come out, they promised us the untold truth about Spider-Man. That was all in the marketing. And they had told us that they were going to recast everyone, like the guy from The Social Networks, Andrew Garfield was going to play Peter Parker / Spider-Man, Emma Stone, who at the time was becoming a rising star, and I did like her at the time. Well, I still do though, but she's going to be playing Gwen Stacy. And I mentioned before, these movies are directed by Mark Webb, who had given us 500 Days of Summer. I have never seen that movie to my everlasting shame, but I will see that movie eventually. But pretty much they took Mark Webb from indie obscurity and pretty much gave him this big franchise. So how they do? Well, let's see. And again, this is going to be a spoiler heavy video, and trust me, I got a lot of shit to say about this movie because again, I can't stress enough how much I love the Sam Raimi movies, so that when we go into these Mark Webb films, I kind of have an unfair bias against them because the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies are so near and dear to my heart, so that when I look at these, I'm just, again, I have an unfair bias against them, and it's totally not their fault, that's just how I feel. But again, don't worry, I will be fair to these movies because there are some good in these movies, well, at least this movie, and I do have some good things to say about them. There are some things I enjoy about this film, and trust me, I wrote down a whole lot of notes about this movie, and I probably will with the Amazing Spider-Man 2. And again, I said I have an unfair bias to this movie. Trust me, I had to write down in my iPad, be fair. Do not hate on the Amazing Spider-Man movies because you love the Sam Raimi films. So again, I remember when this movie came out, it came out the same summer as The Avengers came out and The Dark Knight Rises came out, and I love both those two films. So then we get into this film, I was looking forward to this movie as well. And I was late to the train seeing this movie because I just didn't get the chance to see it at the time, but I finally got a chance to watch it late in the summer, and when I watched it, I was like, I liked it at the time, but then as I started watching it more and more, I kind of started noticing some of its flaws, and it's just not as epic as the Sam Raimi film. Even just from the opening of the film, it just doesn't have that gravitas to build up to like, ooh, I'm so excited for this. It's already opened up with Peter Parker as a young child, and then we see his parents, and they're leaving for some reason, that's one of the things I did like about this movie, because this is where the untold truth comes in. It's like we learn more about Peter's parents, and we might be asking questions like, where did Peter's parents go, and what are they hiding, or was Peter Parker's accident, wasn't it an accident or so? What I do like about these movies is there's the mystery behind it regarding from how Peter Parker turned into Spider-Man and his parents. So I did like it. So we cut to present day and we have Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker. Now here's the deal. Alright, I understand where they were going. They were trying to go for a more modern day take on Peter Parker. I get that a lot, you know. I really do get that because you also got to think what's considered nerd now wasn't considered nerd 10 years ago. So I do appreciate that they were trying to make him more of a modern nerd, but this just doesn't work for Peter Parker. You know, he's this emo Peter Parker. You know, he's running around on a skateboard. He's humiliating Flash because he wants to, skateboarding when teachers told him not to. That is just not Peter Parker to me. I'm sorry, all right. But as Spider-Man, I say he does work. You know, he's a little bit more quippy than Tobey Maguire ever was in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. He's a little bit more lengthy, and he's a little bit more mechanic than Tobey Maguire was in the Sam Raimi films. What I like about him, and rather he has the organic web shooters or not, I don't really care about that, you know, because I think that really plays into Peter Parker. You know, he's very resourceful, he's very smart, he's very scientific. You know, he's able to make the web shooters himself, and you know, he's just able to take trash or whatever and just make something out of it, and he's able to make the web shooters. So that's what I like about. That's one thing I like about him as Peter Parker and as Spider-Man. I think the best way I can describe his take as Spider-Man in this film is that he is like the ultimate Spider-Man comics, and like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man took inspiration from I'd say the 60s Spider-Man movies with a little bit of a modern spin on it. As to these movies, they take a full spin on the Ultimate Spider-Man. Hell, I even seen this video of Andrew Garfield. I think he was at Comic-Con when The Amazing Spider-Man was first announced. He was actually dressed up as Spider-Man, and he gave a heartfelt speech about how much Spider-Man cares about him. So you can tell that Andrew Garfield, he really does care about the character of Spider-Man. But I can't say the same about Peter Parker, because he just feels like he was two different, completely people. Because like I felt like he put more into being Spider-Man than he did Peter Parker. And I don't know if it was his choice to put this take on Peter Parker, or that was the director's or Sony or whoever's choice for this take on Peter Parker. Emma Stone is in this film as Gwen Stacy, and I do like her take on Gwen Stacy better than Bryce Dallas Howard's in Spider-Man 3, and I do like that. You know, she's a girl that, you know, she's kind of befriending Peter Parker, and she kind of has a crush on him. And then the two of them eventually they do get together, and she's a little bit more helpful than Mary Jane was in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man film. So that's one thing I do like about Gwen Stacy. That's really one of the best things I do like about the Amazing Spider-Man films is the love interest of Gwen Stacy. You know, she's not necessarily the damsel of distress that Mary Jane was in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. She actually helps out Peter Parker / Spider-Man, and it's no surprise that Peter Parker actually tells Gwen Stacy that he is Spider-Man. And not only that, but I also like the chemistry between the two characters, and this also might have helped because, you know, the two actors, Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, at the time they were dating in real life. So that definitely helps, and it definitely helps when you got the scenes of, you know, Gwen Stacy, she's washing up his wounds after he fought. Let's talk about Uncle Ben and Aunt May. Alright, Martin Sheen plays Uncle Ben, and he does a fairly good job as Uncle Ben. And Sally Fields, she does do a fairly good job as Aunt May in this film, but I prefer Rosemary, whatever her name was in the Sam Raimi films. I'm so sorry. But what I like about this incarnation of Uncle Ben and Aunt May is that they feel a little bit more real. Like, these seem like people that will be my family members, as opposed to the best way I can describe it is like the Uncle Ben and Aunt May in the original movies. They felt a lot more like grandparents, if that makes sense. You know, like I'd aspire to be like them, and I want to take inspiration from them. But as opposed to Martin Sheen and Sally Fields' incarnation of them, it feels like, yeah, they definitely seem like family members that would annoy the hell out of me. But hey, I love them though. But I do gotta talk about Uncle Ben in this film. You know, it just felt like, you know, it was a device in the movie to move the story along, and that they didn't really care about it. Especially at the scene where the supposed "with great power comes great responsibility" scene, they switch it up and say, if you could do good things for other people, you would have a moral obligation to do those things. That's what's at stake here. Not choice, responsibility. It just felt like they were afraid to say because they didn't want to get compared to the other movies. Another thing I also like about this movie is how, you know, they use Oscorp as pretty much the device to set up everything in this film. You know, Oscorp is where Peter Parker, he goes and gets bit by the radioactive spider, and that's also a play of where his parents might come in, because his parents used to work there, and then they meet Dr. Connors. I'll get more into him later. But Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker does get bit by the radioactive spider over there, and then he starts to get his powers. And then I like the parts where, you know, he's starting to discover his powers. He's on the train, and he's stuck to the pole, and then he's climbing on everything, and then he wakes up in the morning, he accidentally smashes his alarm clock, and then he messes up his bathroom, and then he starts investigating where all this is coming from. And then soon after that, his uncle gets killed, and then he's on a revenge trying to find his uncle's killer. But that's one of the things I did not like about this movie, is that he seemingly finds a killer, but then they just gloss over that. Why? That is a central plot point of what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. It just feels like this whole movie they were glossing over a lot of things, like Uncle Ben's death. So yeah, I feel like they handled Uncle Ben's death poorly in this film. And this also leads to Gwen Stacy's father, Captain Stacy, in which Spider-Man, he's a big hit on YouTube, everyone is seeing him, but then they're calling him eventually because they don't know which side he's on, and so this catches the eye of Captain Stacy, and then this also leads to a dinner scene between the two about whether or not Spider-Man is on the right side of the law or not. And I do like that plot point. And Dennis Leary, he does play a good job at playing Captain Stacy in this film, especially, you know, since he's come from a comedy background, but he does generally do like a good job, especially in dramatic acting, because, you know, he was on shows like, I think, Chicago Fire, and he's in those shitty Ice Age movies. But I think what I like about this movie is progression from him going to Peter Parker to becoming Spider-Man, and then becoming the Spider-Man that everyone knows and loves in this film. Like, there's a scene where he had to save these people from the bridge, and then, you know, he gives his kid, he takes off his mask and gives the kid the mask, and so that it gives him his powers, and pretty much it gives him comfort. Like when I remember I saw the scene, I was like, that is Spider-Man right there. Oh yeah, let's talk about the Spidey suit. It sucks. I'm sorry, I just do not like the suit. I prefer the old suit. This suit just doesn't look right. But I do like when Spidey does crack jokes. I'd say this Spider-Man is a little bit more quippy. Like there's a scene, like the scene where he finally seemingly sees Uncle Ben's killer. The killer pulls out a knife and he's like, "Oh, you found my weakness. It's small knives." And then he shoots the webs out and at his wrist and his crotch. I like it when he is Spider-Man in this film. I do not have a problem with Spider-Man himself in this film. It's just everything else around him, like Peter Parker. And of course, let's talk about the villain in this movie, which is the Lizard, which they promised us in the original films, but I'm glad that they tried to, give us this in this movie. So let's talk about the Lizard, who's played by Rhys Ifans. I'm sorry if I mispronounce his name. But Rhys Ifans, he's Kirk Connors. He worked with Peter Parker's dad, and he's trying to pretty much cross genetics because he's trying to grow back his arm. So he crossed the genetics of a lizard into a rat, and which turns into a lizard, a creepy lizard. But then he also uses it on himself, and his hand does grow back. But then again, this is lizard DNA, so he turns into a big giant lizard, and then it's just a personality change and everything. It's just that doesn't make sense. And at the end of the movie, he decides to turn the entire city into lizard people. Yeah, that's the plot of the villain in this movie. But in the deleted scenes, there's a scene where, he's trying to get his son back, but for whoever the fuck knows why, they cut that out of the film. I felt like that was a good plot point, that was a good character motivation for him, but because in the character motivations in the theatrical cut is just unreasonable. And there's even another character played by Irfan Khan in this film because he's trying to get Dr. Kirk Connors to make this serum work, but it doesn't because they're trying to save Norman Osborn, who is not seen at all in this film because he is dying for some reason. And there's even a scene where the lizard confronts him and he just gets away. They just gloss over that. We don't know what happened to his character, but again, there's another deleted scene where the lizard does kill him. But look, Rhys Ifans, he's great as Dr. Kirk Connors, but as the lizard is a little bit questionable because I think that's another thing I do not like about this movie is a big CGI fest, especially with the lizard. Because the effects do not hold up in this movie, and I remember even when I saw this movie when it first came out, I was just not really a big fan. I wasn't really a big fan in 2012. I'm not a big fan. But as far as the action in this film, it is entertaining. I think the only action scene I don't like is the climax of the movie. I do like the scene where the lizard, he goes to look for Peter Parker at his high school and they have this big fight and it leads to a cool Stan Lee cameo. But the climax of this movie is just the only thing I like about the climax is a thing where, Captain Stacy, he does find out who Spider-Man is, and then once he sees that, he finally understands. So I do like that character arc, and that by the end, Captain Stacy comes to help Spider-Man in the end. But then one of the cops accidentally shoots Spider-Man, and so he's wounded, and so he's having trouble swinging through. But then one of the guys who's the father of the son that Spider-Man saved earlier, he helps him by putting out the cranes, and then that Spider-Man can swing easily through the city so that he can get to the Oscorp Tower. I do like the scene because one, it is Spider-Man, and two, is like the city is finally on Spider-Man's side now. But again, the rest of the climax of the movie is just not really that entertaining. But in the end, they find the lizard, they defeat the lizard, Kirk Connors goes back to his normal self, the city starts to turn into giant lizards, but then they get the antidote out and then everybody turns back to normal and then Captain Stacy gets killed. And Captain Stacy, he makes Peter Parker promise to keep Gwen Stacy out of this, but then Peter Parker just disregards that, and now it's just a little bit of a who will they want they at the end of the movie, but then Spider-Man, he totally rebuttals that and just says, alright, look, I don't hate this film, it's just, I have an unfair bias to this movie, and the reason why is because this movie is just an unnecessary reboot. I prefer for them to just restart the movie with him already as Spider-Man, which they're already doing with him in the cinematic universe. But they should have just restarted this film with him already as Spider-Man, and they would just get flashbacks of him and Uncle Ben and everything, and so we just see him already Spider-Man, the city's on his side, and then we get a big conflict. So ultimately, I just feel like this movie is just a big conveyor belt movie, and this film was just made so that Sony can retain the rights, and so that they can keep this franchise going and continue to make money off of it, rather than just take the time and make a good, cohesive film. But look, there were some good in this film. I do appreciate this movie for what it was. Like, I can see myself watching this movie from time to time, but ultimately I will watch the Sam Raimi films over this. Yes, even Spider-Man 3. Because despite the fact that Spider-Man 3 is a little bit convoluted, I felt like Spider-Man 3 it felt like one man's vision with Sam Raimi behind it. And you can actually see what Sam Raimi was trying to do with Spider-Man 3. As to this just felt like it came off of a conveyor belt. And that this movie was just solely made so that Sony can retain the rights and to make money. and I think the next movie definitely solidifies it. Guys, again, if you like this movie, if you even like this movie more than the Sam Raimi films, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. You have every right to like this movie, and I can understand why some people would like this movie. Just for me personally, I prefer the Sam Raimi films. Not for nostalgic reasons, but I feel like in the original films, they actually got it right of how Spider-Man should be and the essence of the character. Now, again, I don't hate this movie, nor do I think it's the best Spider-Man movie in the world. I just don't think it deserves the pedestal that everyone puts it on. So for that, and in that, I'm going to give The Amazing Spider-Man 3 stars for room for improvement. Because there were some good in this film, and I think that there were some good ideas that I think they accomplished in this film, but it just didn't quite get there yet. That I think that by the next movie, I thought that they were actually going to correct it, and now that they got that movie out the way, I feel like, okay, now we can finally progress with the character, and now we can move forward with the character, but fortunately, that didn't really happen. So yeah, that's my review of The Amazing Spider-Man. Look out for my review of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 next month. If you like this review, hit the thumbs up button. If you want to see more, check out my channel. The link is in the description below. And be sure to check me out on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and Periscope. Peace.